Ladies and gentlemen, it's a Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have our regular and esteemed guests from Kiev, Ukraine, Ivan Kucherenko. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello to everyone. Nice to be here with you today.
Okay, and also I hope we will have some other guests who are not regulars on this show, but nevertheless they know a lot about this Ukrainian question. Let's call it this way, and we will introduce them as they become available. In the meantime, Ivan, I would like to start with the movie that you have for us. Let's see it.
Yeah, let's start with it.
At Crimea, the resort peninsula that Russia occupied in 2014. It is still a resort. Since the beginning of 2024, according to the Russians themselves, 1.3 million tourists have visited Crimea. But there is a catch. In 2023, analysts counted over 220 military facilities in occupied Crimea. Among them are training grounds, fuel depots, ammunition warehouses, radar and air defense bases, headquarters and military units, Black Sea Fleet bases, and a dozen airfields. Back in 2019, Defense One stated that the Russian group of troops in Crimea consisted of about 30,000 soldiers and was expected to increase by another 13,000 soldiers. At the same time, the area of the peninsula is only 27,000 square kilometers, or 10,000 square miles, less than the small states of Hawaii, Massachusetts, or the country of Albania. This entire military armada regularly attacks Ukraine with missiles, drones, and aviation, and serves as a convenient base for infantry and equipment. Although Crimea is packed with soldiers and military bases, the Russian authorities are still trying to profit from it by luring tourists in. Isn't that dangerous? On June 23rd, Russian Ministry of Defense stated that Ukrainian forces launched 5 ATACMS missiles at the Belbek airfield. Russians boasted that their air defense systems successfully intercepted the missiles right away, as usual. However, a video of explosions over the Uchkuivka beach, located just a few kilometers from the military airfield, was published at the same time. Soon enough, Russian propagandists radically changed their version about all the ATACMS being downed and blamed their explosions on, what a surprise, Washington. However, when photos of the remnants of the missile that exploded over the beach went public, analysts noticed that it closely resembled the 9M331, used in the Russian Tor air defense systems. The sand-colored band near the flaps suggests that Russia manufactured this missile for export to Middle Eastern countries. Analysts from the German newspaper Bild also concluded that the missile was from a Tor system. Even Russian military bloggers criticized their own Ministry of Defense. They specifically attacked the authorities for the air raid siren not going off, a typical situation for Crimeans who have repeatedly complained about it. But the Russian authorities have their vision. More alarms mean more anxiety, which means fewer tourists and less money. Russian authorities continue to encourage their tourists to visit Crimea despite all the threats and military facilities scattered across the peninsula. And they come. Accidental civilian casualties even benefit Russian authorities, allowing them to blame Kyiv or the West, a tactic they have used repeatedly. For Moscow, money and deception are paramount. Even though Russian troops constantly place military equipment in civilian areas of Crimea, as stated by the Institute for the Study of War. According to the analysts, Russians are likely placing legitimate military targets near civilian areas on purpose to deter Ukrainian strikes. Additionally, the use of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, residential buildings, and even schools in the occupied part of Ukraine to shield Russian military equipment is a documented fact. Russians continue to militarize Crimea and pretend that civilians are not at risk from the war Putin started. By the way, Putin himself has a huge summer house on the peninsula. Approaching it closer than a kilometer is prohibited. This is another element of the policy of terror, where those who disagree end up imprisoned or simply disappear, as has already happened to hundreds of political prisoners in Crimea. This includes activists among Crimean Tatars, people who have long lived on these lands. But Russia continues to claim that this has always been their land, a comical assertion for anyone familiar with the subject. Did you know for how long have Russians been in Crimea throughout the entire written history of the peninsula? 5.5% of the time. The entire civilized world recognizes Crimea as Ukrainian. One day, the peninsula will be freed from tyranny and once again become a paradise for people.
Ivan, thank you very much for a great presentation. Welcome to the show, Jim. Jim Ida is a great contributor to many shows, and some of the shows that I'm creating is a chess show and investment show, which is actually going to happen tomorrow. Let me start with you, Ivan. With this latest developments, what do you think, how it's affecting Ukrainians people resolve to continue a fight against Russian invaders?
It's a difficult question, Sasha, and I can't say about all Ukrainian people, but what I see from the different research and social analytics, that a lot of people are tending to go to peace negotiations with Russia, even if it will cost Ukraine some territories, and their number increased. Recent analytics showed that after the Russian invasion, there was only 5% of people who accepted any loss of territories in exchange of peace treaty with Russia, and now this number is like 30%. Of course, it's not a majority of Ukrainian people, because majority, more than 50%, are against of any of giving up any territories. This is one important thing, and another important thing to mention, that all those social researches and quizzes are made amongst the those Ukrainians who are not fighting on the battlefield, because it's not possible to now to conduct any research amongst Ukrainian soldiers, and this number is pretty high. According to the some data, it's more than 1.5 million of people who are currently fighting on the battlefield. So if all Ukrainians will be able to participate in this research, probably the numbers were pretty much higher. But of course, we feel tired. Of course, the warriors, the trenches, they're actually tired, and they are heroes. And but Ukrainians who are supporting them in the almost peaceful Ukrainian cities, not considering those times when they're being struck by Russian missiles. They're tired, becoming tired as well of this war, and the major reason, the major question, what Ukrainians ask themselves, how long this war will continue, because without knowing the date of this war, it's pretty hard to be more positive. In the beginning, after the beginning of a full-scale invasion, some Ukrainian experts said that this war will end in 2-3 weeks. Then they said that it will end in 2 or 3 months. It will end in autumn, and that time it was easier to keep ourselves motivated, because we've seen some kind of deadline up front, and now without understanding when this war will end and what should be done for this war to be ended, except of giving up all territories, all Ukrainian territories to Russia, which is not acceptable, actually, then no one has the answer. So that's
The tragedy of situation where Ukraine is today is that Russia is completely militarized its economy. It's more militarized today than ever Soviet Union was. And Russia cannot now continue the war because of exhaustion, because of the incredible material resources went into it. So it cannot finish the war. It cannot continue the war. It's Russia becoming the war itself. It's a country that can exist only as long as the war exists. Without the war, it will collapse instantly. And unfortunately, the only country where Russia is at war is Ukraine. It were hopes, and even still there are now, that probably a few other former Soviet republics, like maybe Kazakhstan or Georgia or maybe some others, will sooner or later start uprising against Russia. So far, it hasn't materialized yet, but we'll see. In the meantime, Ukraine is unfortunately staking all this incredible aggression from Russia alone, with help from Western powers. Um, the problem is how reliable is that help, because if that help stops at any given time, say past November, Ukraine will be in even worse situation than it is today. Steve, as a U.S. politician and rising star, what could you tell us about what you feel about the situation?
Well, Sasha, I want to thank you so much for being such a great host of this show, and it's an honor to serve with you on the network. I got to be honest with you. I think we're not paying enough attention to Ukraine. I've gotten a little bit off of my readings about Ukraine as much as I do media work. But at a high level, here's my thoughts. I think that to me, it's ludicrous that Republicans in the U.S. Senate and Vice President nominee J.D. Vance, along with President Trump, say that we don't want to invest $1 or $2 billion to help the people of Ukraine when we spend $800 billion in our defense industry in the United States. So point number one, I think it's well worth the investment to protect democracy and protect the people of Ukraine. I would ask my hypothetical situation to former President Trump, and I wish I could bring JD Vance on the show and pardon my French, rip him a new one by debating. But I would ask the senator, Senator, do you remember? You're too young, of course. You're 39, but
hang on, be careful.
but if he read history, does he remember World War II? What if the United States of America had said, we're going to let Adolf Hitler just go through and take Czechoslovakia and Poland and all of Europe, and we're going to be okay. And let's just be quiet where there's genocide and murder taking place and in concentration camps and Jewish people being exterminated. It's going to go away. We stood up as the United States of America with the Allies to fight for democracy. So that's my second answer to your question, Sasha, is I believe that's what this is about. This is about doing what's right, which is standing up to Putin. And I am concerned that if Trump is elected, which is still looking likely at this point, maybe not. I think it's going to be a Hail Mary. I think VP Harris has a better chance. But let's say Trump does win. Well, what he's saying is, Putin's going to negotiate a deal because he's so afraid of me. The North Koreans, when I was president, they weren't firing missiles. Well, I'm going to rip him a new one too, because the former president, we were already standing down missile attacks from North Korea. So we could be here for hours, but I hope I answer your question. So I think, and the final thing I'll say is that if we are not successful in Ukraine, then what's going to stop Taiwan from being invaded? What's going to stop from Putin from saying, okay, well, I took over Ukraine, now I'm going to go over and take over someone else? So Sasha, does that help? I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much. By the way, about Taiwan, I think Trump already answered what's happened with Taiwan. Taiwan has to pay for its protection. And if Taiwan is not going to pay, then U.S. will say, China, go in, take over Taiwan, please do so, and go to Europe, and whoever doesn't pay 2% of the budget.
And Senator
But
Vance,
didn't he say, I hope that they do invade? Isn't that what he said? Sorry, Jim. I know you got your hand up. Didn't he say, I hope that they invade? Isn't that something that he said?
I'm
the final
sorry.
thing, the final thing I'll say for Senator Vance to stay on news shows that while I really don't care what happens to Ukraine is inexcusable, and any man that would be running to be the vice president of the United States to say that it's ridiculous. I mean,
Stephen.
and I'm not saying that as a politician. You're the vice, even if you're elected, you're the vice president of the United States, and you cannot make statements like that. It's an embarrassment to our country.
Yes.
And I think he owes the people of Ukraine
And your allies. It's an embarrassment to your allies.
Yeah,
Because you don't
and he
do
owes-
this alone.
he owes the Ukrainian community of the United States of America and around the world an apology. And I'm asking Senator Vance, if this podcast gets to him, show some courage, stand for convictions once in your life, and apologize for a very disparaging statement, which dishonors those Ukrainians who have died for their nation. And as a man who served his country in the Marines, I would expect nothing less from the next vice president of the United States, possibly.
Steve, number one, I have some information about his so-called service in the Marines. Okay, he was an assistant of clerk correcting spelling mistakes in texts that were prepared for real soldiers. Okay, and the same thing as he was being venture capitalist. By the way, if you want to invite him to the show on Pod TV, maybe you should start a new show, a comedy show on Pod TV, and invite him as a headliner. Maybe that would be a good idea. Jim, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, Sasha. Thank you for. I just wanted to make the statement that my dad served in World War II, and we were not going to oppose Nazi Germany. There was a great isolationist movement in the United States at the time. If you study history, you know this. It was a European conflict. Stay out of it. It wasn't until we were hit with Pearl Harbor that we mobilized forces and got into the action. And there's still that isolation aspect in the United States right now. And it's pretty much part of the MAGA platform. They stay away from, our allies are on our own. Hats off to Joe Biden for what he did with NATO to create a unified front to help defend Ukraine. This is a warmongering tyrant invading another country that has been internationally recognized as a sovereign country, and it was invaded. And it's a democratic country invaded by a tyrant. So we supported it. NATO supported it. Now, if you remember, Trump was going to break up NATO. They didn't need NATO. So, we're in desperate straits here in terms of continuing the support. The Republicans held up a massive amount of support for Ukraine and for an unconscionably long period of time until they finally were embarrassed into giving it, to voting for it. Not all of them did, of course. The MAGA people that are so dedicated to Donald Trump as their leader are isolationists by nature. You go it alone, but protect our borders. And if we're not invaded, we don't care. So what Vance is saying is reflective of the people that are voting for Donald Trump. And so what we have here is a serious problem that isolationists never works. We're part of a global economy, and we're not part yet of a global community, but we need to act like we are. And Ukraine is part of that global community. One day, Russia may be part of that global community, but that's how we have to think. We have to think about partners, allies, people that we can allow to live in quiet dignity without taking advantage of each other, without invading each other, without exploiting each other. These are the types of things that I think are in our future if we elect the right people. And if we elect people like Donald Trump, we're going down a path to isolationists. Who cares what they do to other people? It's not my problem. That can't be America, in my opinion. It's got nothing to do with why this country was founded.
Thank you, Jim. I think we all are very interested and anxious to hear Shaquille from Australia Outback. please let us know, what do you really feel about this issue?
Actually, that's from yesterday, so I'm not in the outback anymore. I'm back home in Sydney. I do want to just I want to address a couple of things. I'll swing slightly to the right, as I often do, so I'll let Jim down. I don't actually think that this is left-right politics. Actually, I've been saying this for quite a long time. I'm very disappointed in the response, not just from the United States, but from the Five Eyes countries and from Europe. They should have supported Europe more, the Ukraine more, in my opinion. Like Fancy's saying, okay, we'll do something if they go after Estonia or Lithuania or Latvia and all that sort of stuff. Like, what are we talking about here? Now, one of my friends who's a diplomat was recently in Belarus, sent me some photos. I went, oh, wow, that looks really gorgeous. Then he sent me a photo from Russia. I thought it looks really gorgeous. And Sasha, if we can go back a handful of years when we first met, I remember saying to you, hey, the tax rates in Russia are pretty low. Seems like a good place to actually put a hedge fund because, hey, they're technologically savvy and out of Moscow and St. Petersburg, very intelligent people, very well-educated people. Russia probably still has a lot of things going for it, but they're run by a terrible government. I think that we need to step up and say, hey, this is not okay. So for the isolationist comments that Jim made, this is a real problem. It's especially a problem for the United States because the United States doesn't just represent the United States. It represents all the rest of us as well. Right. And I don't think that we should be doing that. Either we stand for human rights or we don't. And if we stand for human rights, then we should be prepared to do whatever it takes to support those human rights. Okay, yeah, sure. We can end the war tomorrow. Here you go, Russia, take all of Ukraine. The war's over. That's not a negotiation that we should be having. That's not acceptable. Okay. Should Britain take Hawaii back? Do you know what I mean? Like this is ridiculous. So we shouldn't be even contemplating that kind of an idea. So I'm very disappointed in the response from the West. I'm very disappointed that the West really hasn't said very much about the increase in the harmony in the relationship between China and Russia. And Putin is now Kim Jong-un's chauffeur. What is going on? You know what I mean? We here in the West are just sitting back and watching all of this happen. And what I would say is if we can't protect our friends, should anybody expect our governments to protect us? If something happened within our own countries, if we were subject to some conflict, what are we going to do? So I really feel that we should be doing a lot more for the Ukraine, regardless of who the leader is. And if it is Trump, who, as I said, I'm not supporting him or not supporting him, I just think the polls show that he's likely to be the next president. I think that the international community, the allies, especially the other 4 members of the Five Eyes countries, should take a stronger position, which leaves the United States with no real choice, rather than letting the US lead this. If what they're going to do is say, well, we're not going to spend the money, we're not going to put boots on the ground, we're not going to do anything, well, perhaps the rest of us should.
Well, I'm going to end with this. I've got to run, but I want to thank you all. I just think, Sasha, I think we have to continue to bring these issues of awareness of the importance of this. I think it's so important for the Ukrainian community of the United States. I've been telling them in North Carolina to continue to lobby to the United States Congress, to lobby the United States Senate. The good news is Senator Tillis, who's our Republican senior senator in North Carolina, has been really working with the Ukrainian community on this issue. He's probably not running for re-election because I think, his party is very disappointed that he's working across the aisle. But I want to thank Senator Tillis for addressing this issue. And I think it's important. And I think it's also easy to forget about how important this conflict is. So much of the oxygen in the room is being focused now on the presidential race, the negative attacks, the rhetoric we're seeing on social media. And it's something important. But I want to thank Sasha for this show. And I hope I can come back on more often. And, long live Ukraine, Slava Ukraine. And, let's continue to work together to address these important issues. So
It will
Thank
be
you.
our pleasure to have you soon, and same as Jim and Shaquille. Thank you so much today.
Well,
And,
one day when I'm a U.S. congressman or U.S. senator, which I'm hoping will happen in the next 2 to 4 years, I will be able to do more to help Ukraine.
You'll
please do.
get my vote if I'm American by then.
Thank you very much.
Sasha and Ivan, if I could ask you guys a question. If the Russian people were to actually get rid of Putin, and not just Putin, because I don't think this is just him, I think this is the people behind it. But if they could get rid of him and the people of Russia said, Ukraine, we're sorry, it wasn't us, it was our government that did this, can you foresee any time in the future that Russia and Russians and Ukrainians could actually get along? Is that something that could happen at some point, or is that impossible to envisage right now?
Ivan, please. What
Yeah.
would you say?
It's another difficult question because it's a well-known Russian narrative that it's a Putin war. It's a war of Putin and his near fellows, his gang of Russian politicians. But it's not Putin who is producing those rockets who are flying on our heads. It's not Putin who is loading those rockets on the airplanes. It's not Putin who bombs actually the maternity house. It's the child hospitals in Ukraine and civilians. And I've seen a lot of videos with Russian prisoners of war. And of course, amongst them, there are some interviews when they say, "Oh, we were persuaded to go to this war. They've taken us in power and put some guns in our backs, and we had to go in trenches and attack Ukrainian positions." But besides, there were a lot of captured Russian soldiers who really thought that they are doing the right thing, that they're saving Ukraine from Nazis, that they are claiming the native Russian territories which belong to Russia, and all those propaganda shit. And of course, it was Putin and it was Russian government who used propaganda to wash the heads of Russians in order to believe that and to empowering them their imperialistic ambitions to get back the territories or the former Soviet Union, to make Russia the country which everyone is afraid of, and all that bullshit. But now they're believing in it, and end of Putin and Russian government will not mean that they will automatically stop believing in it. Remember the Second World War. It already was in our history. It was the same situation when the majority of German people believed that they are doing the right thing, that it's okay to burn Jews in concentration camps, that they are cleaning the race and they're making to become the race of gods and all those stuff. And Russians are going now the same way. And how long time it was taken for Germans to change their opinion, and actually not everybody changed it. Actually, a lot of Germans still consider that those period was a period of great Germany, and it was a tragedy for them. Like Putin and a lot of Russians, they consider that period of Soviet Union was a great period for Russia, for Russian Empire, and they're so pity that that period ended, that the end of Soviet Union, like Putin is saying, was the largest geopolitical catastrophe it's okay for them that Soviet Union behave actually like Russia is behaving. They've made conflicts all around the world. They threatened the world with nuclear weapons. They've considered their own people as slaves. They've killed millions of peoples, and among them millions of Ukrainians during the Holodomor and during the Second World War, using those tactics of meat grinder. Actually, it's not new for the Russia. It was during the Second World War as well, because they considered the losses in the weapons, in the armored vehicles, but they didn't consider any losses amongst the soldiers. They used them just as meat, and that was the reason why they were able to strike Germany back, because they had much more meat than Germany. So answering your questions, I'm not sure that there will be such acceptance of Russians after the end of this war and end of the Putin. Maybe after several generations, and maybe if Russians will understand that they were wrong, and they will really apologize, and they will confess on the Ukrainians maybe after that. But in order to do that, I don't know what may happen. Germans confessed on the sins of Nazis and the Hitler only because Germany was conquered. Actually, Germany was defeated during the Second World War.
Oh, Hitler confessed like this, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, the history has given us a lot of opportunity to say that the forgiveness will be a long time coming. You know, Koreans are still mad at the Japans. Some Greeks are still mad at the Turks. You know, we had a civil war in the United States, and there's still people that fly Confederate flags on their doorsteps. And so these multi-generations, the tensions start to ease, but sometimes they never go away. But, you know, the Ukrainians and Russians are family in many ways. They're cousins fighting cousins. Like in the Civil War, we had brothers fighting brothers. You know, so some family ties can be restored. Some diplomatic relations can be restored. But these types of terrorist activities, like the invasion, that can't be forgotten. That won't be forgotten. And what Japan did hasn't been forgotten to this day. And, you know, so apologies only go so far. It's very difficult. The main thing is to have international unity in and opposing any country from doing something like Russia has done to Ukraine. It has to be unanimous, not just NATO, not just the West. It has to be throughout the world a condemnation of violating international law, of creating, you know, invading and using rape and other types of terrorist activities to try to discourage a population and overcome it and conquer it. This is the 21st century. It should be international outrage, and international outrage that doesn't die out when the next news cycle takes over.
Great words.
Sorry, before we finish the program, I wanted to say about apology, what you're discussing, that it takes only that long and that much. There's a nice short story about apology. It was in New York, Brighton Beach, Russian restaurant, and there are two gangsters and Russian gangsters, and one say, you know what, you just they were dancing, you just stepped on my mother's toes. He says, I apologize. He says, apologize? Pay.
Money talks, right?
Nice joke and great words, James. But I've got another question: who will implement this? What organization or what country can make any other country from doing such things like Russia is doing in Ukraine. United Nations becomes useless. Russia is a member of Security Council of United Nations.
Yeah, kick them off the Security Council. I mean, that's
why Russia is not still the.
I don't know how easy it is to kick them off
if keep them on the Security Council. There's no question.
I don't know how easy it is to kick them off the Security Council, but look, I'll certainly say that I think, and I don't know enough about Russia and the Ukraine, but just from what I've examined in other previously conflicted areas, I think that there's a distinction to be made between the citizenry of the country and what their government does. And oftentimes you find that when they actually get freedom, if you look at the former USSR countries, for example, when they actually get their freedom, they embrace it. So I hope that there is peace. Maybe I'm an idealist, but I do hope that there will be peace at some point, and I hope that some of the wounds can be mended. What I will say, again, not to repeat what I've said before, but the international community needs to decide what they're going to stand for. A lot of people in America say, well, we're not in the business of nation building. Okay, then, well, let your enemies nation build in a way that you don't want, right? I understand the concern that domestic tax dollars are being spent on these international issues, but that's the reason why we're so well respected around the world, not just the United States, but the Five Eyes countries, Canada, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, and extension to that, the 14 Eyes countries, which is majority of them are in Europe. That's the reason why we're so respected. And we don't deserve that respect if we're not going to stand up every single day in every nation where we see what we deem to be unacceptable human rights abuses, where we see governments doing things to other countries that are not acceptable. I mean, would Russia ever dare to invade Australia? Would Russia ever dare to try to invade Germany today? No. So why do they pick on the Ukraine? Now, Nigel Farage criticised Europe, saying, look, you're poking the Russian bear. Whether that is true or not true, whether Europe should have dealt with it differently or not, is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that the Ukrainians believed that Europe would support them, and by extension, that the United States and its allies would support them. We have every moral obligation to actually look after the Ukraine, and if we don't do that, if we acquiesce to the demands of Russia or acquiesce to Putin or whoever else replaces him, then we don't deserve the respect of the rest of the world. So it is actually not just about Ukraine and Russia. It's actually about what we stand for in the West, in my opinion. Sorry if I said that a bit strongly, but that's how I feel.
I will disagree with one thing, and I will. The citizens are different from the government. There's no question about it. And they do, when they get freedom, they do embrace it. However, when their propaganda is coming down, as Ivan was talking about, and that's all they hear, they start to believe it. So the citizens are now backing their government because they think what they're being told. Not all of them, of course, but a substantial part of it. And this is the danger we have in the United States right now when Trump's propaganda machine is blaring, and you turn on Fox News and you hear the same thing. You turn on hate radio and you hear the same thing. This is when people get this same message from different sources, but it's always the same message coming from the same place. And Russia's case is coming from the Kremlin. So, you're hearing the same thing over and over again. You start to believe it, and it doesn't matter what the facts are. And this is happening in Russia. This is happening in the United States. This is part of the problem we have, separating truth from fiction. And the people that are lying through their teeth and getting away with it, how do you fight them?
I agree, Jim. The biggest problem right now, when you're discussing peace between Russia and Ukraine, the biggest problem is that there is no mechanism, international, who is going to guarantee this peace. What's happened if there will be a peace and in a few months or even a year and a half, Russia will collect incredible army, 2 million strong, even 3 million strong, or whatever. They will bring Koreans if they need it, and whoever else, and they will invade Ukraine from all sides, from the east and from the north, and Belarus will be involved and so on. Who is going to guarantee that? You want to do second Budapest memorandum? No, you don't want to do that. So number one, to discuss peace, a mechanism which will ensure this peace, even as Putin armies, the Western armies on the front line right there, try dare to break through the international world peacekeeping line. Nobody's even discussing that. Okay, give him some territory. Give him, say, maybe more territory. What can I say? That has to be definitely.
When will enough territory be enough? When will enough be enough? I find that to be totally unacceptable. Again, if Ukrainians are prepared to accept that parts of the eastern Ukraine feel like they're more Russian than Ukrainians, and they vote and they say we'd rather be part of Russia, okay, maybe I can accept that from an international perspective. But short of that, you're just going to concede territory? Why? And the thing is that if the powerful countries in the West got involved, you wouldn't be conceding anything. If anything, Ukraine would be getting territory from Russia, right? If the whole of the Western world was to turn around with all of our military might and all of our money and all of the things that we represent and stand up to Russia, Russia would acquiesce much more quickly than what we should ever have to acquiesce to them.
Because Russia understands only one thing, is the power, the strength. And remember about territories, remember Munich, 1938. And remember what's happened with Czechoslovakia as a result of Western power saying, okay, so he'll take Czechoslovakia and he will be pleased and we don't have any problem anymore with Hitler. And by the way, if you're talking about United States entering Second World War, in 1939, there was a huge meeting at the Madison Square Garden. And what was the meeting about? Appeasing Hitler and saying what he is a great friend of American people. And that was 1939. So whatever Trump is doing with Putin, saying that he is a great man, I trust him all the way. I don't trust my own CIA and FBI. No, they're good for nothing. Mr. Putin told me, and I have no reason not to believe him. Do you remember?
Sasha, you're being very unfair to Trump. Okay, he's going to open a casino in Moscow. Okay, and he's going to make lots of money, and he will absolutely get peace out of it. I mean, come on now, be reasonable.
Well, he'll go bankrupt on the casino. But
you know what?
No, he won't. Jimmy will get a government bailout from the Russian.
It's going to be next bankruptcy for him, Do you think that the Russian gangsters will allow him to take even a penny out of Moscow? You must be out of your mind. You know what? And the only thing is that, especially if Kamala Harris will win presidency, Trump will be really, really busy. With what? Serving his time. Because the only reason why he's fighting for presidency is to escape jail time. But if he will lose this election, hey, Donnie, back to jail. Bye-bye.
Please don't give him any ideas, though, because I have this fear that if he does lose, is he going to be back in 2028? Like, I'm sick of hearing about him. Like, again, I think he's going to win, but, is he going to have another go in 2028? And then if he's still alive in 2032, come on, America. Will you get your shit together, please?
Shaquille, you should explain to me only one thing before we finish the program today. If president, according to Supreme Court, has complete immunity, why Biden, which he's not going to be next president anyway, so he has nothing to lose, why he's not going ahead, arrest Trump, his rising star, J.D. Vance, and by the way, all Supreme Court just as well. Put them all in jail Get them lawyers to defend them for the next 7-8
Maybe
years.
they'll just disappear.
Why?
The answer to your question, Sasha, without going to qualified immunity and all the rest of it, the answer to your question is a little thing that starts with I and ends in Y. It's called integrity. That's why it would happen.
But
Biden had it
immunity is much more important than integrity in this situation.
Well, that also starts with I and ends in Y, but I'll just go with integrity.
Anyway, if you feel that it's a real possibility of a coup if Trump will lose election, so you have to do certain things to prevent it. And the easiest thing to prevent it, put the man in jail, lock him up, and that's it.
Can I tell you something that Jim's not going to like to hear? My personal security detail, because I was supposed to be in the US and I will be in the US before the election. After the assassination attempt, my personal security detail told me that I have to do all this extra stuff and notify them and all this extra stuff because I get a lot more security in the US than I get in any other Western country. And I've been specifically told that I'm not to be there on election night and I'm not to be there at the inauguration, regardless of who wins. That's not good. That's the first time in my adult life since I've had the positions that I've had that I've ever been told that you are not to be in the United States because there's a security risk. Not because anybody's going to go after me, but just because of the general instability in the US. Yeah. And again, I love and adore the United States and respect the United States. That's not good. And if I'm being told that and I'm nobody, then I can only imagine what other people are being told in government circles and consultancy circles, etc. The fact that I was told, because I actually would have wanted to be at the next inauguration, regardless of the winner, because hey, it's the US inauguration. But yeah, I've been told no, that there's too much of a security risk. Please don't be there. And I said, well, I've got to be in North America anyway. They told me to go to Canada. So, that says a lot. And it's not, look, I'm making levity out of it, but it's actually not funny. This is not a good reflection of what we are. So.
Excellent. And final word before we finish. You mentioned, Shaquille, that you were at one time you were impressed by possibility of Russian high-tech fund or something to do with Russian high-tech. I want to tell you that Ukraine is even much more advanced in high-tech than Russia. And Ivan, you are one of the representatives of Ukrainian high-tech. Can you confirm it, please?
Sorry, Sasha, I missed the question. Can you repeat it, please?
No, I wanted you as a representative of Ukrainian high-tech to confirm that Ukrainian high-tech is highly developed and in many respects more developed than Russian high-tech.
Of course, because Ukrainians are very talented, not very talented warriors, but also very talented engineers. And those restrictions in which we are fighting with Russia, like we are prohibited to strike using Western weapons deep in Russia territories to destroy their infrastructure which is working for war, like oil refineries, which is bringing money into their military budget. We can't use Western weapons, so and we don't have Iran as our ally, which can supply us with the Iranian drones, which we can use. So Ukrainians developed a lot of our own drones, which we are successfully using to strike Russian objects, and the same is on the battlefield. Now a lot of Ukrainians are producing different technical solutions, hardware, software to assist Ukrainian army on the battlefield. Actually, Ukrainian artillery was and is more effective against the Russian artillery, not because Ukrainians are so precise, but because Ukrainians have special IT solutions which Russians don't have, which allow to make a quick reconnaissance on the battlefield using drones to get the proper coordinates of targets and to strike precisely to those targets. And this is also a Ukrainian high-tech solution. And a lot of examples, and those sea drones actually, which were used to destroy the almost all of Russian Black Sea Fleet, including the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, Moskva Cruiser. Moskva Cruiser was hit by Ukrainian missiles, Neptune, but the rest of the fleet was actually destroyed by the Ukrainian naval drones, which is quite a know-how of using from Ukrainians, and they're very technological.
Ukrainian probably was the first country that developed the sea drones that destroyed fleet. Mark?
Yeah, I had a quick question for you, and this is actually for Ivan and you and anybody else that's on the panel. This coming Friday is a very big event that goes on every 4 years, and historically speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, and everything, that has been a time that, because it's supposed to be about unity, conflicts around the world would stop and everything along those lines. So I just wondering whether it's Israel or whether it's this Ukraine-Russian war, is there any possibility that this conflict will have a temporary ceasefire during the Olympics? Because the Olympics will be starting this Friday, and like I said, historically speaking, that was the time that they would use sport as a tool of unity, and there would even be major conflicts that would stop for at least a week or two during the Olympics.
There's a greater chance of me becoming the next president of the United States than there is of there being a cease to all world conflict. I'm sorry to say it, but I think that everybody on this planet should be working towards a better future. And I won't repeat what I said yesterday about Japan and Australia and our relationship, but I'll just say this: we shouldn't make enemies out of each other. We're all after the same stuff. You know, we all fall in love. We all have terrible things that happen to us. We all have wonderful things that happen to us. We're just human beings. Okay, we can disagree about all sorts of things. So what? I prefer chocolate and you prefer hazelnut. I prefer vanilla and you prefer mint ice cream. Like, who cares? What are we arguing about? Right? You think that, you know, we should have more taxes or less taxes, or you think we should have more of this or that. Why are we arguing? Why are we fighting? We are blessed to have a life at all. The statistical chances of any of us actually being here is astronomical. So we're here. We're living on this planet. We may only have one shot at life, and we can do so much better. There are billions of people that are starving. There are children that are going without. There are people that live in all sorts of misery all over the world. And then we have a group of people who are so selfish that they'll put their own interests above everybody else. And they'll go, oh, well, maybe I'll go and attack this country. Maybe I'll go and get this land. Maybe I'll go and take this farmland from some poor peasant in order to enrich myself. But that's not reflective of all of what we are. You know, human beings have created medicine selflessly. The woman that created penicillin and the vaccines and stuff like that gave it away for nothing. Didn't even charge anything. She must have been one of Jim's friends and not mine. But gave it away for nothing, right? This is what humanity is. And for all our warts, for everything that's bad about us, I think there's more good in us. And if we can just tap into what makes us good, if we can just tap into that love that we have for each other and let that win, I think we'll be all better for it.
Excellent. Shaquille, just in case, if there will be a stop of all wars on Friday, start working to redo your birth certificate, because you will become a contender, according to... Well, with that, I'd like to thank you so much, everybody, participating in today's program. And we'll see you Friday, same place, same time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Thank you.